She stood alone at the top of the grand staircase, while 300 guests whispered below. The candlelight caught the diamonds at her throat. The silk gown draped perfectly over her shoulders. She looked exactly like the Duchess of Thornwood should look. And her husband walked past her without a single glance. Alara watched Lord Cale Ashworth descend the staircase. His dark hair caught the light. His jaw was set in that familiar hard line. He moved through the crowd with the same cold authority he carried everywhere. He did not offer her his arm. He did not turn back. She gripped the marble banister until her fingers ached. The polite smile stayed frozen on her lips. Years of training held her spine straight. Years of disappointment kept her heart locked away where no one could see it break. "Duchess, shall I announce you?" The steward appeared at her elbow. "Yes," her voice came out steady. "Thank you." She descended alone. The sea of silk and jewels parted for her. Men bowed. Women curtsied. Everyone showed the proper respect to the Duchess of Thornwood, everyone except the Duke himself. Across the ballroom, Lord Ashworth stood speaking with Lord Reginald Fair and 2 other gentlemen. His back faced her. His broad shoulders blocked any view of his expression. Not that she needed to see his face. She knew exactly what she would find there: cold indifference, the same expression he had worn for 4 years of marriage. Lady Maurice Thorne glided up beside Alara with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Your Grace, what a beautiful evening. The Duke has outdone himself with the arrangements." "Yes, he is quite dedicated to appearances." The words slipped out before Alara could stop them. Lady Maurice raised one delicate eyebrow. "I meant," Alara said smoothly, "that my husband takes great pride in hosting." "Of course," Lady Maurice smiled again, "though I noticed he did not escort you down. Such a pity. Lord Reginald's wife tells me they always descend together at their estate in Kent." The barb struck deep, but Alara had learned long ago not to bleed where others could see. "My husband was attending to urgent business. A duke's responsibilities never rest." She inclined her head gracefully. "Now, if you will excuse me, Lady Maurice." She moved away before the woman could twist another knife. The ballroom stretched before her like a gilded cage. Crystal chandeliers dripped light from the ceiling. Roses perfumed the air. Violins sang from the gallery above. Everything was beautiful and perfect and suffocating. Alara circulated through the crowd exactly as duty required. She complimented Lady Ashby on her new granddaughter. She asked Lord Whittaker about his plans for Parliament. She smiled until her cheeks ached and laughed softly at the appropriate moments, all while her husband never once looked her way. At midnight she stepped onto the terrace to catch her breath. The autumn air bit through her silk sleeves. She did not care. The cold felt honest, real, unlike everything inside that glittering room. "Your Grace, you should not be out here without a wrap." She turned. Captain Miles Ember stood a respectful distance away, his uniform crisp, his expression concerned. He had served under her father years ago, one of the few faces at court that had never shown her anything but kindness. "I needed air, Captain." "The air tonight is unforgiving." He shrugged off his coat and held it toward her. "Please, I could not face your father in the next life knowing I let his daughter catch a chill." Alara hesitated. Accepting a gentleman's coat was harmless, utterly proper, and yet she knew how it would look if someone saw. But she was so very tired of being careful. "Thank you." She let him drape the coat over her shoulders. Captain Ember stepped back immediately, maintaining every inch of proper distance. "I know it is not my place, Your Grace, but I have noticed you seem unsettled this evening." "I am perfectly well." "Forgive me. I only meant that my wife often wished someone had asked her that question during her first years of marriage. She found the adjustment to married life quite difficult." His voice held gentle understanding. "She passed 3 winters ago, but I remember her struggles well." Alara looked at him then, at the genuine sympathy in his weathered face, at the absence of any scheme or agenda in his eyes. Your wife was fortunate to have such an observant husband. I was the fortunate one, he smiled sadly. I simply wanted to say, Your Grace, that loneliness in a crowded room is still loneliness, and sometimes it helps to know someone sees it. She could not speak. The words had pierced too close to the bone. My husband does not see me at all, Captain. The confession escaped before she could catch it. Quiet, barely a whisper, but once spoken it could not be taken back. Captain Ember was silent for a long moment. Then he is blinder than any man should be. He bowed deeply. Good night, Your Grace. I hope the next ball finds you happier. He left her alone on the terrace with the stars and the cold, and the weight of a coat that was not her husband's. The terrace door opened behind her. She did not turn around. She knew those footsteps. 4 years of listening for them had burned them into her memory. Duchess. Lord Ashworth's voice was ice and stone. She had once thought it beautiful. Now she knew better. Husband. I saw Captain Ember leaving the terrace. He stepped beside her, tall and rigid, and I see you wearing his coat. I was cold, he was kind. The tongues of the tongue need very little encouragement to wag. I expect my Duchess to be beyond reproach. Alara turned to face him at last. Your Duchess, your estate, your reputation. Tell me, my lord, do I exist as anything beyond your possession? Something flickered in his gray eyes. There and gone, like heat lightning on a distant horizon. You are overwrought. We will discuss this tomorrow. There is nothing to discuss. Captain Ember is old enough to be my father. He served under my own father for 15 years. He saw I was cold and offered me a coat. If that threatens your precious reputation, then perhaps your reputation is more fragile than a duke's should be. The words came fast and sharp. Alara barely recognized her own voice. She had never spoken to him this way, never pushed back, never shown the anger that had been building like steam inside a sealed pot. Lord Ashworth stared at her as if seeing a stranger. Come inside. His tone was different now, not softer exactly but less certain. It is late. I will return when I am ready. She turned her back on him and faced the gardens. The bare rose bushes stretched out in the moonlight like skeletal hands. She expected him to leave, expected his footsteps retreating into the ballroom, expected what she always received from him. Nothing. But he did not leave. You have been distant these past weeks. Alara laughed. The sound held no humor. I have been distant. For 4 years I have waited in this house for you to remember I exist. I have hosted your dinners, managed your household, smiled at your associates. I have been the perfect duchess in every way that can be measured, and you have treated me like furniture. I have given you everything. You have given me things. You have never given me yourself. Silence stretched between them like a chasm. The music from the ballroom drifted out, muffled and distant. Another world, another life. I am not a man of easy sentiment. His voice had gone rough at the edges. I never claimed to be. And I am not a woman who can survive on nothing. She slipped Captain Ember's coat from her shoulders and folded it carefully over her arm. I will return this to him, and then I will retire for the evening. If anyone asks, tell them your Duchess had a headache. She walked past him. He did not stop her. He never did. That night Alara lay in her cold bed and stared at the canopy above. Her maid had long since banked the fire and retired. The house creaked softly around her. Somewhere down the corridor, her husband slept in his separate chamber. 4 years of marriage, 4 years of separate rooms. She had loved him once, desperately, completely, like a flower loves the sun, turning always toward him, hopping for warmth, receiving only light without heat. She had entered this marriage at 19 with dreams stitched into her wedding gown. She had imagined stolen glances across crowded rooms, quiet conversations by the fire, children, laughter, a husband who would eventually, surely, grow to love her. Instead, she had received formality, distance, a man who performed his duties flawlessly in public and forgot her existence in private. The only warmth in their marriage had been on their wedding night, and even then he had come to her like a man completing a task, gentle enough, proper enough, but without any of the passion or longing she had hoped for. He had not come to her bed since. At first, she had thought something was wrong with her. She had examined her reflection endlessly, practiced conversation, learned every detail of his estate and his interests. She had twisted herself into every shape she could imagine trying to become what he wanted. Nothing had worked. And now, at 23, she was exhausted. Alara pressed her hand against the empty space beside her. The sheets were always cold. Something had to change. She could not spend the rest of her life as a ghost in her own home. But what could she change? She could not leave. Divorce was unthinkable. Her family would not welcome her back with the shame of a failed marriage. Society would shun her. She would lose everything and he would lose nothing. She was trapped, permanently, absolutely trapped. Unless she stopped caring. Unless she simply accepted the marriage she had and built a life inside its walls that did not depend on him for joy. The thought settled into her chest like a seed. She could do that. She could stop hopping, stop waiting, stop watching doorways for a man who never came. She could become her own person. The decision felt like a death and a birth all at once. Alara closed her eyes. The tears came silently as they always did, but this time she let them fall without shame. She was mourning something, a dream, a hope, a version of her life that had never existed. When morning came, she would be different. She did not know yet what that difference would look like. She only knew she could not continue as she had been. Dawn crept through the curtains in pale fingers. Alara rose before her maid arrived. She dressed herself in a simple morning gown. She pinned up her own hair. When Sarah knocked and entered, she stopped short. "Your Grace, you are already dressed." "I woke early." Alara turned from the window. "I will take breakfast in the village today. There is a family I wish to visit." "A family, Your Grace?" "The Millers. Their son was injured at the mill last month. I learned of it at the last charity meeting. It is past time someone checked on them." Sarah looked confused but asked no questions. "Shall I order the carriage?" "No, I will walk. It is not far." Walk, as if she were an ordinary woman, as if she were not a duchess expected to travel only in gilded boxes. The morning air tasted like freedom, crisp and clean and full of possibility. Alara walked the mile to the village with only a footman trailing behind. She felt the eyes of her neighbors watching from windows. She did not care. The Miller cottage stood at the edge of town, small and cramped. 5 children, a father who worked himself to the bone, a mother who took in laundry, and now a son with a broken leg who could not work. Alara knocked on the door. Mrs. Miller opened it, her eyes going wide with shock. "Your Grace." "I heard about Thomas. May I come in?" The visit was awkward at first. Mrs. Miller did not know where to put her. The children stared. Thomas lay on a pallet by the fire, pale and thin. But Alara did something she had never done before. She sat on the floor beside the boy. She asked him about his pain. She listened. By the time she left, she had arranged for a physician to visit weekly. She had promised to speak with the mill owner about compensation. She had learned the names of all 5 children and something about each of them. Walking home, she felt something she had not felt in years. Purpose. This was something she could do. Something that did not require her husband's attention or approval. Something that was hers alone. The second day, she visited the orphanage. The third day, she called on a widow who had been ill. The fourth day, she organized a meeting with other ladies to discuss improving conditions at the workhouse. She stopped eating dinner with the Duke. At first, it was an accident. She had lost track of time at a tenant's cottage. By the time she returned, the dinner hour had passed. Sarah informed her that His Grace had dined alone. "Did he ask where I was?" "Yes, Your Grace. I told him you were visiting tenants. He said nothing further." Of course he did not. The second time, she was simply too tired. The third time, she sent word that she would take a tray in her room. By the end of the first week, the pattern had shifted. She no longer arranged her days around his schedule. She no longer waited in the drawing room hoping he would join her. She no longer watched the clock. She was too busy. The village had needs she had never noticed before: families struggling, children hungry, women without support. For years, she had been so consumed with winning her husband's affection that she had missed the world right outside her door. Now she threw herself into it. Lord Ashworth noticed her absence on the fifth evening. He sat alone at the long dining table, the candles flickering over empty chairs. His wife's place had been set as always. His wife had not appeared as had become usual. "Where is Her Grace?" The footman stepped forward nervously. "She dined with the vicar's family this evening, Your Grace. She sent her apologies." "Did she?" He said nothing more, but his jaw tightened. The vicar's family. She had time for the vicar's family, but not for her own husband. He ate his meal in silence. The food tasted like ash. Later that evening, he found himself walking past the East Wing drawing room. The door stood open. Inside, his wife sat surrounded by papers, her sleeves rolled up, her hair slightly disheveled. She was writing something with intense concentration. She had never looked like that before, unguarded, real. He stepped into the doorway. "It is late." Elara looked up. Her expression did not change at the sight of him. No hope, no disappointment, nothing. "I am organizing the winter charity drive. There is much to do." "You have been occupied lately." "Yes," she returned to her writing, "I have." He did not know what to say. He had never known what to say to her. From the moment they married, words had failed him. She had been so young, so eager, so full of hope that he would be something he was not capable of being. And he had retreated behind formality, because he did not know how else to protect her from the coldness that lived inside him. "I trust your projects are going well." "Quite well, thank you for asking." Dismissal, polite but unmistakable. He should leave. He should return to his study and his ledgers and his carefully ordered life. Instead, he stepped further into the room. "Tell me about them." She looked up again. Surprise flickered across her face before she smoothed it away. "Why?" "Because I am asking." Elara studied him for a long moment. Then she shrugged slightly and began to speak. She told him about the Miller boy who was healing well, about the orphanage which needed new blankets before winter, about the widow who had recovered enough to take in sewing, about the workhouse conditions that required immediate reform. She spoke with passion, with knowledge, with a fire he had never seen in her before. And Lord Cale Ashworth realized, with dawning horror, that he had no idea who his wife was. He had married a girl, he had thought he understood her, sweet, gentle, obedient Elara, the perfect duchess, quiet and undemanding. But the woman before him was none of those things. She was fierce, intelligent, determined. She had spent 4 years in his home, and he had never once asked her what she cared about. "You should attend the next magistrate meeting," he heard himself say. "They would listen to you." Elara blinked. "Women do not attend magistrate meetings." "They will if I bring you." A cautious silence fell between them. She looked at him as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Thank you," she said finally. "That would be helpful." He nodded. He did not know what else to do. The next morning, Elara went to the magistrate meeting. She expected to be ignored or patronized. Instead, she found that the magistrates listened when a duke's wife spoke. They hesitated, certainly, glanced at her husband, but Lord Ashworth simply inclined his head and they fell in line. By the end of the meeting, she had secured funding for the workhouse improvements and a commitment to inspect the mill's safety conditions. Walking out, she felt breathless with triumph. "You did well in there." She turned. Her husband stood beside her, his expression unreadable as always. "Because you supported me. I opened the door, you walked through it." The compliment was so unexpected that Alara did not know how to respond. She simply stared at him. "There is a dinner at Lord Ashby's estate next week," he continued. "I would like you to attend with me." "I attend all your dinners." "Not recently," he held her gaze. "You have been elsewhere." "Because I had other obligations." "I know," he paused. "I am asking you to come as my wife, not as my duchess." The distinction was so slight, and yet it was everything. Alara felt something dangerous flicker inside her chest. Hope. She had thought she had killed it, but here it was, rising again at the slightest hint of warmth. She crushed it down immediately. "I will attend, of course." "Good," he nodded once. "I will see you at dinner tonight." A question he had never asked before, he had simply expected. "I will be there." That evening she sat across from him at the long table. The candles burned between them. The food arrived in its usual succession of courses. They spoke of the magistrate meeting, of the upcoming dinner, of estate business. It was the longest conversation they had shared in months. After dinner, he walked her to the staircase. They paused at the bottom, where the portraits of his ancestors watched with painted eyes. "Ilara." Her name, not Duchess, not Madam, her name. "Yes." He seemed to struggle with something. His jaw worked, his hands clenched at his sides. "I know I have not been." He could not finish. Alara waited, the silence stretched. "I will try to do better," he said at last. It was not an apology, not a declaration, not anything close to what she had once dreamed of hearing. But it was something. "Good night, my lord." She climbed the stairs alone, but for the first time in years, she did not feel quite so invisible. The weeks that followed were strange and unsettling. Lord Ashworth began appearing in places she did not expect him. The drawing room in the afternoon when she met with the charity committee. The gardens when she returned from the village. The breakfast room in the morning, which he had never frequented before. He did not speak much. He simply watched, listened, occasionally contributed a comment or question. His presence unsettled her. She had grown accustomed to his absence, had built her new life in the empty spaces he left behind. Now he was filling those spaces, and she did not know what to do with him. "Your husband seems quite attentive lately," Lady Maurice observed at the Ashby dinner. Her smile was as sharp as ever. "One might think he had something to feel guilty about." "I am sure I do not know what you mean." "Oh, I mean nothing at all." Lady Maurice sipped her wine. "Only that Captain Ember's coat was the talk of the last ball, and now the Duke hovers at your elbow like a watchdog. One wonders." Anger flared hot in Alara's chest. "Captain Ember is a family friend, nothing more. Anyone who suggests otherwise is both cruel and mistaken." My, the kitten has claws." Alara turned away before she said something she would regret. Across the room, she caught her husband watching her. His gaze was intense, searching, as if he were trying to read words written in a language he did not understand. She looked away first. The dinner was endless, course after course, conversation after conversation. Alara performed her role flawlessly. She always did, but something had shifted inside her. The mask felt heavier than it used to, the smile harder to hold. When they finally returned to Thornwood, she was exhausted. "Are you well?" Her husband's voice came from beside her in the carriage. "I am tired. You spoke little this evening. That is unlike you." She turned to look at him. Shadows hid half his face. The moonlight caught the silver in his eyes. "I had nothing to say." "Lady Mari said something to upset you." It was not a question. He had been watching. "She implied that your recent attention was due to guilt, because of Captain Ember's coat." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. "I see. I told her Captain Ember is a family friend, nothing more. I know what he is." His voice was tight. "I know he has been kind to you when I have not." Ilara's breath caught. "I am not blind," he continued. "I have seen the way you look at me, or rather the way you have stopped looking at me. You used to watch the door whenever I entered a room. You used to light up when I spoke to you." He paused. "You do not do that anymore." "No, I do not. I destroyed it. Whatever you felt for me, I destroyed it through neglect." She could not speak. The words were too close to the truth. "I do not know how to fix it," he said. "I only know that I want to try." "Why now?" Her voice cracked. "Why after 4 years?" He was silent for so long that she thought he would not answer. Then he spoke, low and rough. "Because I almost lost you. At the last ball, when you walked away from me on the terrace, I realized how close I was to losing you entirely. Not your presence, not your duties, you, and the thought terrified me. You never showed it. I know I have never known how to show what I feel. My father believed emotion was weakness. He beat it out of me before I was 10 years old. I learned to lock everything away. It became habit, reflex. I did not realize I was doing it to you until it was almost too late." Ilara stared at him. In 4 years he had never spoken of his father, never spoken of his childhood, never revealed anything about the man beneath the title. This was the most he had ever given her. And she did not know if it was enough. Kale. His name. She had not spoken his name in longer than she could remember. "I do not know if I can trust this, if I can trust you. I spent 4 years trying to love a man who did not want my love. I cannot go through that again. I am not asking you to trust me immediately. I am asking you to let me try." The carriage stopped before Thornwood's entrance. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Ilara stepped out into the cold night air. Her husband followed. At the bottom of the staircase she paused. "I will try," she said quietly. "That is all I can promise. It is all I ask." But as she climbed the stairs to her separate chamber, she wondered if trying would be enough, for either of them. Winter descended on Thornwood with ice and silence. Snow blanketed the gardens. Frost painted the windows. The estate settled into the quiet rhythm of the cold months. Ilara continued her charity work. The village children now had warm coats. The miller boy was walking again. The workhouse reforms had begun. She had purpose. She had respect. She had a life that mattered. And slowly, carefully, she allowed her husband into the edges of it. He did not push, did not demand. He simply appeared at the charity meetings, at the village visits, at the quiet moments in the drawing room when she was too tired to be formal. He brought her tea without being asked, remembered the names of the families she helped. Once, he spent an entire afternoon repairing a roof for a widow whose husband had died at sea. Ilara watched him from the garden. His sleeves were rolled up. His hands were calloused and capable. He worked alongside the villagers without any trace of ducal arrogance. Who was this man? Where had he been hiding? "You are starring, Your Grace." She turned to find Captain Ember beside her. He smiled gently. "I am confused, Captain. I thought I knew my husband. I thought he was cold and distant and incapable of warmth. But now you are seeing the man beneath the title." "Yes. War does strange things to men, Your Grace. I served with the Duke briefly many years ago. He was different then, lighter, But his father's death changed him. He became responsible for the duchy at a young age. The weight of it pressed him into a shape he was never meant to hold. Elara absorbed this. Why are you telling me this? Because I think he wants to find his way back, and I think you might be the only one who can help him. He bowed. If you will excuse me. He walked away before she could respond. That evening she found her husband in the library. He sat by the fire, a book open in his lap, but his eyes were fixed on the flames. Captain Ember said you served together. He looked up surprised. Many years ago, before my father died. He said you were different then. Cale was silent for a moment, then he gestured to the chair beside him. Sit, please. She sat. I was 22 when my father died. I had been a soldier before that, a second son. My older brother was meant to be Duke. He paused. He died of fever 6 months before our father. The title fell to me. I was not prepared. I was not ready. I had spent my life in the army, and suddenly I was responsible for an estate, a title, and 300 people who depended on me. You never told me. I never told anyone. I simply became what the title required. Cold, controlled, perfect. I locked away everything else because I did not know how to be both a duke and a man. He looked at her. When we married, you were so full of hope. I did not know how to meet that hope. I was afraid of disappointing you. So I retreated. I told myself you would be happier without my darkness touching you. But I was not happier. Her voice was barely a whisper. I was alone. I know, his voice broke. I know that now, and I am sorrier than you will ever understand. The fire crackled between them. Elara felt something shift inside her chest, a wall she had built, a protection she had constructed. It did not crumble, but it cracked. I do not know how to be your wife anymore, she said honestly. I do not know what we are to each other. Then let us find out together, slowly, honestly, without the masks. She looked at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, at the fear and hope and regret all tangled together. All right, she whispered, slowly. Christmas came to Thornwood with candles and greenery and the scent of pine. Elara had never seen the house so alive. In previous years, the Duke had preferred minimal decoration, quiet observances, nothing that suggested celebration. This year was different. She had ordered garlands for every banister, holly for every mantel, a massive tree for the great hall, decorated with ribbon and dried fruit and tiny candles that flickered like stars. When Lord Ashworth walked into the hall and saw it, he stopped. Good heavens! Elara braced herself for criticism. It is perhaps excessive. It is beautiful. He walked slowly around the tree. My mother used to decorate this way. I had forgotten. He reached out and touched one of the ribbons. His expression was distant and soft at the same time. I thought you might disapprove. No, he turned to her. No, I do not disapprove. I am simply not accustomed to warmth. You are bringing it back into this house, into me. He paused. I do not deserve it. Perhaps not, she smiled slightly, but I am giving it anyway. On Christmas morning, she found a gift outside her door, a small velvet box tied with silver ribbon. Inside lay a locket, simple, elegant. Inside, a miniature portrait of her mother. She had mentioned once, years ago, that she had no portrait of her mother. He had remembered. She found him in the great hall, standing alone by the tree. How did you do this? I commissioned it from a painter in London. He worked from old sketches in your father's possession. You spoke to my father. I asked his permission. Cale turned to face her. I have been trying to understand what you lost when you married me, what you gave up. I wanted to give something back. Elara closed her hand around the locket. The metal was warm against her palm. This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me. I am glad. And I have nothing for you. You have given me more than you know. He stepped closer. This Christmas, this life in the house, the patience you have shown me, I do not need more." She looked up at him, at the face she had once loved desperately, then hated quietly, then ignored completely. She was still learning to see him clearly, still learning to trust what she saw. But standing there in the candlelight, with the locket in her hand and the scent of pine in the air, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Possibility. January brought rain instead of snow. The roads turned to mud. The village huddled indoors. Sickness spread through the valley like fog. Alara was in the village when the fever took hold. She had been visiting the orphanage when one of the children collapsed. By nightfall, 7 more were ill. By morning, the sickness had spread to the mill workers and their families. She sent word to Thornwood that she would not be returning. "Your Grace, you must come home," the messenger pleaded. "His Grace insists. The fever is dangerous. Tell His Grace that I am needed here. The physician is overwhelmed. There is no one else to nurse the sick." She expected soldiers, guards sent to drag her home. What she received instead was something entirely different. Lord Ashworth arrived at the orphanage at dawn. He was not alone. He had brought 3 physicians from the neighboring county, a cartload of medicine, blankets, food. He found her in the sick room, her sleeves rolled up, her hair tied back, her face pale with exhaustion. "You should not be here," he said. "Neither should you. I am the Duke. I go where I am needed." He looked around the room. Children lay on pallets, feverish and coughing. "Where do you need me?" "You are offering to help." "I am not offering, I am insisting." For 3 days, they worked side by side. She nursed the children. He organized supplies and spoke with the physicians, and used his authority to commandeer medicine from the next county. He did not flinch at the sickness, did not retreat to the safety of his estate. He stayed in the village, sleeping in a cramped cottage, eating the same meager food as everyone else. On the second night, Alara found him sitting outside the orphanage, his head in his hands. "Kale." He looked up, his face was haggard. 2 more children died tonight. I held one of them, a little girl. She asked me if her mother was waiting for her. Alara sat beside him on the cold stone step. "Her mother died last winter. She was an orphan." I knew her mother. She worked in the dairy." He stared at the mud. "I have been Duke for 12 years. I have managed ledgers and estates and political alliances, but I have never held a dying child. I have never known their names." "You know them now. Is this what you have been doing all these months, while I sat in my study and ignored you?" "I have been trying to help." "While I did nothing," he turned to her. "I have been blind, not just to you, to everything. I thought being a duke meant maintaining appearances, managing wealth. I did not understand that it meant this." "It is not too late to understand." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. "Stay with me," he said quietly. "When this is over, stay with me, not as my duchess, not as the mistress of my household, as my partner, my equal, the person who sees what I cannot see." Alara felt tears prick her eyes. "You are asking me to trust that you have changed." "I am asking you to help me change. I cannot do it alone. I have been alone for 4 years." "I know," he squeezed her hand, "but I am here now and I am not leaving." The fever passed, spring came, the village healed, and so slowly did the distance between the Duke and his Duchess. They began taking breakfast together. Real breakfasts, not the silent, formal affairs of years past. They talked about estate business, village needs, the books she was reading, the thoughts he had never shared with anyone. He asked her opinions and listened to her answers. She asked him about his fears, and he told her. It was not a fairy tale. There were still silences, still moments when he retreated behind his walls and she felt the old familiar loneliness creep back in. But now he noticed when it happened, and he came back. "I am trying," he said one evening when she had been quiet for too long. "I know I am not good at this, but I am trying." "I know," she reached across the table and touched his hand. "So am I." Spring turned to summer. The gardens bloomed. The village prospered. Lady Mari spread her usual poison at a garden party, suggesting that the Duchess's charity work was a cover for indiscretions with various gentlemen. But this time, when Alara heard the whispers, she did not crumble. She walked directly to Lady Mari's, her head high, her voice steady. "Lady Mari's, I understand you have concerns about my conduct. I invite you to accompany me on my rounds tomorrow. You can see for yourself what the charity work entails. I am sure your assistance would be most welcome." Lady Mari's smile froze. "I would not wish to intrude." "It is no intrusion. I welcome the company, unless, of course, you prefer to criticize from a distance." The circle of ladies around them fell silent. Lady Mari's face flushed crimson. "I am sure that will not be necessary." "Then I trust the rumors will cease." They did. Lord Ashworth heard of the confrontation from his valet. That evening, he found Alara in the garden, cutting roses for the hall. "I hear you faced down Lady Mari's." "I did not face her down. I invited her to participate. She declined." He laughed, actually laughed. The sound was rusty and surprised, as if it had been locked away for years. "You are remarkable." "I am simply tired of bullies." He stepped closer. "Alara, I need to tell you something." She turned to face him, the roses forgotten in her hand. "When we married, I thought I was doing my duty. I thought being a good husband meant providing for you, protecting you from scandal, maintaining the estate." He paused. "I did not understand that it meant loving you. I did not understand that love was something I was capable of." Her heart stilled. "But I understand now. I have loved you for longer than I knew. I loved the way you smiled when you first came to Thornwood. I loved the way you tried so hard to reach me, even when I gave you nothing back. I loved the way you rebuilt yourself when I failed you. I loved the way you poured your heart into this village. I loved the way you faced Lady Mari's without flinching." He took a breath. "I love you, and I know I have no right to ask for your love in return, but I am asking anyway." Alara stood frozen. The roses trembled in her hand. 4 years she had waited for these words. 4 years of loneliness. 4 years of invisible tears. 4 years of slowly giving up hope. And now here he was, the cold duke, the distant husband, standing before her with his heart in his eyes. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I know. I am afraid that if I let myself love you again, you will disappear behind your walls. You will forget me. I will be alone again. I cannot promise I will be perfect. I will make mistakes. I will retreat sometimes. It is in my nature, but I can promise that I will always come back. I will always try." He reached out and gently took the roses from her hand, setting them aside. "You have become the center of my world, Alara. I did not realize it until I almost lost you, but I know it now." She looked at him, at the man she had married, the stranger she had lived with, the partner she was learning to know. And she made a choice. "I loved you," she said softly, "for years, desperately, completely. And then I stopped. I had to stop because loving you was destroying me." Pain crossed his face, but he did not look away. "But I think," she continued, "I think I could love you again, differently. Not as a girl loves a dream. As a woman loves a man with clear eyes, with honesty, with the knowledge that love is not perfection, it is showing up, again and again, even when it is hard." "It is hard for me too," he admitted. "I do not know how to be vulnerable. I was taught that vulnerability is weakness, but with you I want to learn." "Then learn with me." She stepped forward and took his hands. His fingers closed around hers, strong and warm and slightly unsteady. "I am still angry," she said. "I am still hurt. Those feelings do not disappear overnight." "I know. I will need time." "You can have all the time you need. I am not going anywhere." She looked up at him, at the lines around his eyes, the silver beginning to thread through his dark hair, the face she had once memorized with longing, then memorized with resentment, and was now learning to see anew. "Cale." "Yes. I am glad you finally noticed me." He pulled her into his arms. His embrace was fierce and careful at the same time, as if she were something precious that he was afraid of breaking. "I noticed you the moment I saw you," he murmured into her hair. "I just did not know how to show it." "Show me now." He pulled back just enough to look at her. Then he lowered his head and kissed her. It was not their first kiss. They had kissed at their wedding, a proper, formal press of lips. They had kissed on their wedding night, awkward and duty-bound. This was different. This was a man who had spent his life locked inside himself, finally opening the door. This was a woman who had spent years in the cold, finally feeling the sun. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing harder. "I have waited so long to do that properly," he said. "Then do not wait so long for the next one." He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes and transformed his severe features into something warm and alive. "I love you," he said again. "I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you. I will hold you to that." She picked up her roses. He offered her his arm, and together the Duke and Duchess of Thornwood walked back into their home. It was not a perfect ending. There would still be difficult days, moments when old patterns resurfaced, arguments, misunderstandings. The scars of 4 years did not vanish overnight. But something fundamental had shifted. The ice had cracked. The walls had begun to come down. And for the first time since her wedding day, Elara Ashworth walked into Thornwood Hall feeling like she belonged there. Summer deepened. The estate thrived. Word spread through the county of the Duke's transformation. He was seen in the village regularly now, not as a distant authority figure, but as a man who knew names, who asked questions, who remembered. The tenants who had feared him began to trust him. The gentry who had respected him began to like him. And through it all, Elara stood at his side, not behind him, beside him. They consulted each other on decisions. They argued and compromised. They built something new from the ruins of their old marriage. One evening in late August, they sat together on the terrace where everything had changed. The same terrace where she had stood wearing Captain Ember's coat. The same terrace where she had told her husband that she could not survive on nothing. "The last ball of the season is next week," Cale said. "Will you descend the staircase with me?" Elara smiled. "Are you asking me properly?" "I am." He turned to her. "Duchess, will you do me the honor of taking my arm?" "I will consider it." "Consider it." "I may have other offers. Captain Ember might need someone to hold his coat." He laughed, and the sound rolled across the evening air like distant thunder. "You will never let me forget that coat." "Never." "Good." He reached for her hand. "I need the reminder of how close I came to losing you, of what I almost threw away." She laced her fingers through his. "You did not lose me. You found me instead." "I did." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I found you just in time." The night of the ball arrived. Thornwood blazed with candlelight. Carriages lined the drive. Music drifted from the open windows. Elara stood before her mirror while Sarah put the finishing touches on her hair. The gown was deep blue silk, the color of midnight. Sapphires glinted at her ears and throat. "You look beautiful, Your Grace," Sarah said. "Thank you, Sarah." A knock sounded at the door. Sarah opened it to reveal the Duke, dressed in black and silver, his eyes finding his wife immediately. "You may go, Sarah." The maid curtsied and departed. Cale walked toward Elara slowly. "You take my breath away. You have seen me in ball gowns 100 times. I never looked properly. I was too busy being the Duke to notice my wife." He stopped beside her. "I am looking now." He offered her his arm, she took it. Together, they walked to the top of the grand staircase. Below, 300 guests waited. The same guests who had whispered about her at the last ball. The same society that had watched her marriage crumble with gossip and pity. But tonight was different. Tonight she was not descending alone. Cale turned to her at the top of the stairs. In front of everyone, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "Shall we?" She smiled, "We shall." They descended together, her hand on his arm, his head held high. A united front, a real partnership. The whispers started immediately, but this time they were not whispers of pity. They were whispers of envy. Lady Maurice watched from across the room, her eyes sharp and calculating, but even she could find nothing to criticize. The Duke and Duchess were flawless, in love or something very like it, united in a way that no rumor could touch. "May I have this dance?" Cale asked as the orchestra struck up a waltz. "I thought you never danced." "I never had the right partner." He led her onto the floor. They moved together with surprising grace. She had not known he could dance like this. She had not known many things about him. "I have something to tell you," he murmured as they turned. "Is it good news or bad?" "Good, I hope." He paused. "I have decided to establish a charitable foundation in your name, to continue the work you began in the village, the Ashworth Foundation for the care of tenants and workers. You will direct it, I will fund it." Elara missed a step. "Cale, you have shown me what a duchy should be, what I should be. This is the least I can do." "It is too much." "It is not nearly enough. For 4 years I gave you nothing. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it." She looked up at him, this man who had been a stranger for so long, this man who had learned to love her. "I do not need grand gestures, I need you, present, honest here." "I am here." He pulled her slightly closer. "I will always be here." The waltz ended. The room applauded. They stood in the center of the floor, surrounded by candlelight and society and the life they had built together. And Elara Ashworth, Duchess of Thornwood, realized that she was no longer waiting for love to arrive. Love had arrived, quietly, patiently, on a cold terrace, in a sick room, over breakfast conversations and garden walks and shared silences. Love had arrived, and it was here to stay. She looked up at her husband, her partner, her friend. "I love you," she said. The words came easily now, naturally, without fear. His eyes shone. "I loved you too late, but I love you completely. Then we have the rest of our lives for you to prove it." He smiled, that real smile, the one she had learned to treasure. "The rest of our lives," he repeated. "I like the sound of that." The orchestra began another waltz. He offered his hand. She took it. And they danced. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you for watching and see you in the next amazing story.